Chapter 2 Warriors.
Hey, wait!
They were halfway along a shortcut to Snowman's train station. Ken came to a halt, swung his right arm out to the side, and warily adjusted the bat in his left hand.
What is it now?
Asked Anna. When she turned to look, Ken had an unusually intense expression on his face, and seemed to be listening for something. But Anna, feeling a little tired of it all, doubted the severity of the situation. The boys had taken baths, stuffed themselves full of food, and had an afternoon nap while she was busy gently persuading her tearful father to let her go with them. From that point, they had finally gotten their journey underway. Any signs of other travelers in this forested trail winding through the mountainside had been hidden by the snow, which came up to their knees with every step. Anna was used to this, but the going was still slow. On top of that, the sky looked pretty threatening. If they wanted to make it to the station before dusk, they would have to hurry, and yet Ken kept pausing suddenly like this, and wouldn't explain why. Their journey had barely begun, and she was already wary of it. Anna looked at him, crossed her arms, and said quietly,
Oh, please, don't tell me you forgot something back in my house. Here they come! Out of my way!
Ken cried. He grabbed Anna by the arm and pulled her back forcefully. She quickly realized that he was trying to get her behind his back to protect her, but since it happened so suddenly, she tripped over her own feet. Luckily, the fallen snow was soft, but she came very close into crashing into a thick branch of a nearby fir tree. She was about to say something like,
Don't be so rough with me!
But suddenly her mouth hung open and she almost screamed. Kicking up violent flurries of snow like a smokescreen behind them as they came, some kind of huge, ferocious white creatures were attacking from every direction at once. In an instant, the fight was on. Ken's bat was swinging, Lloyd's boomerang was whizzing, and those white blurs scattered, leaving thick clouds of snow in their wake. But before Anna could even breathe a sigh of relief, the white blurs ran at them again from all sorts of unexpected angles. They were coming in sideways, from above, from the right, from the left, and from behind. It was all so overwhelming. Anna didn't know what was going on and couldn't find her bearings. Cowering there on the snow, all she could do was curl up into a ball, covering her face with her hands, peek out through her fingers, and try not to be hit by anything flying around in the chaos surrounding her. Her heart was beating so hard that it hurt, and her throat had gone dry. A sound like a dog's yelp seemed to echo endlessly in the depths of her ears. Her perspective had gone funny, and everything she saw happening around her seemed fake, like something out of a movie. She almost wanted to faint, but given the current situation, she knew that would probably make things worse. She would only get in the way, and might even get hit by Ken's bat. Somehow, she had to get behind the fir tree and hide. Using all the strength she could muster, she tried to stand up, but just then... Breath that smelled of blood danced in a white vapor around Anna's face. A vicious, pointed muzzle had suddenly appeared before her eyes. An unbelievably long tongue, pink in color and tinged with black, rolled and twitched between rows of fangs as sharp as knives. Eyes that glistened with the excitement of finding prey shone too close for comfort, and Anna felt the strength drain from her body. There was no way she could stand.
They're wolves!
She realized.
And 4 of them at once! Yeah!
She couldn't hold her voice any longer, and she shrieked. She swiftly dodged the wolf's paws as it slashed at her, but the tip of her left braid lagged behind and was sliced clean off by its sharp claws. The remaining half of her long black hair fluttered free. Through small gaps in the tufts of her hair that now fell over her face, she could see the end of the braid that had been cut off as it fell with a slight thud onto the snow. Until a moment ago, it had been healthy and thriving, but now it was nothing but lifeless matter. The tip of Anna's nose twitched as if she caught a chill.
Oh, what is it now?
As soon as it had landed, the hateful wolf was back up and coming right for her, until it took an explosive 3-base hit to its muzzle. Ken had returned, wearing a careless smile.
This whole time I figured you were sort of a tomboy,
he said.
But it turns out you're just a plain old sissy girl.
Anna tried to reply, but her face was frozen stiff. Her throat was too tight, and she couldn't find her voice at all.
Well, I guess that suits you better anyway,
Ken went on.
You are a girl after all. You know, if you want, I can try to coach you enough to the point where you won't have to trip over yourself at the very least. Well, what do you say? Oh, whoops! Look out!
Another explosive hit. Ken's breathing was steady, and he spoke so casually, even as he swung his bat with all of his might. It was as if he took pride in the violence. Behind them, Lloyd fought brilliantly as well, and gradually things became quiet. One by one, the wolves collapsed onto the snow. Then their legs began to twitch and convulse as the look of some sort of evil possession seemed to drain from their faces. Their ears drooped, their tails curled inward, and they slunk despondently back into the depths of the forest.
Well, that's that.
After shaking out his unkempt blonde hair, Ken neatened it only slightly before returning his hat to his head.
All right, let's go,
he said.
It's this way, right?
He took the lead and set off, humming to himself as he walked.
Oh, how irritating!
Anna thought. But her legs still felt numb and she couldn't move them. She also couldn't bring herself to say even a single word. Anna took off her gloves, touched her fingers to the snow, and closed her hands around it. Then, still gripping the snow tightly, she touched it to her face. It felt cold, and it felt good.
Can you stand?
Lloyd knelt by Anna's side and looked into her eyes.
I'm really sorry.
He went on.
About your hair, I mean. It's nothing, really.
She took the hair tie out of her right braid and shook her head. Her hair had been growing out for quite some time and had finally reached down almost to her waist. Only about 4 inches had been cut off, but it wouldn't be possible to twist it all into one single braid now because the two halves were of different lengths. All she could do was tie it up into a ponytail, but she knew it didn't suit her.
I'll just have to find a pair of scissors somewhere and even it out,
she thought.
My mother always kept my hair so neat and pretty, but she's gone now. Somehow I'll have to figure out how to cut it and make it look nice on my own. But it's going to be so short now.
She couldn't hide her sullen expression, and from the corner of her eye, she could see Lloyd looking very worried and curious. He had small beads of sweat on his forehead, and his glasses had slipped down to the tip of his nose, making him look rather childish. But he spoke as steadily as he could.
Are you hurt? Well, we have medicine, you know. Please don't be afraid to tell us things like that.
I'm fine.
Anna closed her eyes tightly and tried not to think about her hair.
Thank you,
she said.
I think I can walk now.
Don't overwork yourself,
Lloyd replied.
Please, rest if you have to.
Lloyd was small for a boy, but Anna was surprised by how strong he was as he helped her to her feet.
Oh, and please don't let it bother you,
he added.
Let what bother me?
The things Ken says, he replied.
For a moment, he said nothing, biting his lip. Anna waited intently until suddenly the words rushed from Lloyd's mouth.
That guy, he says some pretty nasty things, but he's not bad at heart. Since he's so into sports, he often takes his physical strength and athletic ability for granted. On top of that, he's also got asthma, and from time to time he suffers from fits of that. Since he could still do his best while also overcoming that sort of ailment, he thinks I'm not trying very hard at all. Ever since I joined him on his journey, he's done nothing but complain. Of course, I have caused him some trouble along the way, but after a short while, all of the heavy thinking jobs became my responsibility to a point. There were roadblocks he never could have gotten past if it wasn't for me. So you think it would be a plus or minus zero situation. A perfectly balanced relationship, wouldn't you? Well, that's the way it seemed to me. But I still had to reassure myself of this from time to time because no matter what I did, everything he said to me was so cruel. But I just keep telling myself I can't get angry, and I have to let it go because that fool just hasn't realized yet that the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, you know? I try really hard to always keep that in mind, and I think that's how I've managed to continue traveling with him thus far. I think in actuality, he's happier having companions than he would be if he were traveling alone. But of course, he would never say this. I'm not even sure if he truly feels it. In other words, I sense that he's missing some part of his emotions. I think that's why I'm just so happy that you're traveling with us now. One way or another, even if the journey is difficult, and even if you can't keep up with our pace right from the beginning, no matter how many hardships we'll face, there's absolutely no need to worry. You may be a girl, and you may only be a newbie in the ranks of the Defense Force, but please have pride and confidence going forward, and before long, all of us should grow up a bit more into well-adjusted human beings, right?
Anna looked completely flabbergasted, and suddenly Lloyd's eyes darted nervously and he turned bright crimson from his cheeks to the top of his head.
And that's why, what I meant to say is,
I understand,
said Anna.
Thank you. I think that cheered me up a bit. I feel much better, so let's go...
No, that's not it,
Lloyd stammered.
I'm so sorry. That was way too forward of me. I talk too much, don't I?
No, it's not that,
Anna thought as she slowly shook her head.
Ken, I've been reading your thoughts, but not your mind. I should talk with you more. That's the only way I'll truly get to know you. If we're really setting out to find all of these missing people and end this ongoing crisis, I should really start forming closer bonds with these two.
Anna held out her handkerchief, and Lloyd knitted his brow, looking puzzled.
You're sweating,
Said Anna.
a lot. You'll catch a cold.
Huh? Oh no, do I smell bad? Thank you.
Lloyd reached out for the handkerchief, but then quickly withdrew his hand. His thick leather gloves were awfully filthy from his long journey, and it seemed that he didn't want to dirty Anna's neatly ironed handkerchief. Flustered, Lloyd attempted to wipe his brow with his sleeve instead, but Anna caught his arm without saying a word, and she began to use the handkerchief on him. When she lifted his bangs, she could see that he had a fairly handsome brow, as one might expect from such a clever boy.
I'm really sorry,
Said Lloyd.
No need to apologize so much. It's fine.
Anna replied.
Am I making friends?
She wondered. Little wrinkles gathered near Anna's nose as she broke into a small smile. When he saw this, Lloyd responded with a stiff and awkward smile of his own, although this expression looked about the same as when he was on the brink of tears.
What is with you two?
They look up and suddenly Ken's freckled face was looming above them, his eyes blazing with anger.
Why are you slacking off like this?
He snarled.
Did you grow roots or something? I had to walk back a quarter mile just to find you guys again. If you can get up, then you can walk, and if you can walk, then you can hurry. Idiots.
Having said this, he was off, sending snow flying as he ran.
That's the way he is, all the time.
Lloyd seemed to say with his eyes.
But he's not bad at heart, you said.
Anna's eyes seemed to reply.
I'm positive.
Oh well, guess we better go then.
They reached Snowman's train station while the sun was still high in the sky. But the schedule had been disrupted by the ice and snow, and the trains were not traveling past a place called Spokane, the next town over. Upon hearing this, Ken's mood became even more foul. While waiting in the station for the next train, he chose a seat far away from the other two and sat there brooding about something or other for quite some time. When the train arrived, he climbed in and found that the car was nice and empty, so he sprawled out across the seat and kicked his filthy boots up on the armrest. While chewing on a small twig he picked up from who knows where as if it were a toothpick, he looked out through the window. His behavior was truly obnoxious. He seemed dejected, but despite trying her hardest to get her mind's radio to work, Anna couldn't pick up on anything. Whatever he was thinking about, she could not guess. And so, quietly, she consulted Lloyd.
Hey, why do you think he's so angry?
I think he's more frustrated than angry, honestly.
Lloyd had taken a newspaper from the overhead compartment and answered her from behind the financial column.
I'd say it's because he's dead set on trying to save the world as soon as possible. But since these adults are struggling to operate this single railway, it just creates another obstacle. I can see that being a bit of an annoyance.
Where is he trying to take us anyway?
Who knows?
Lloyd replied.
It's really hard to tell what that guy is thinking. But for now, probably Marysville. If we're looking to gather supplies, that'd be the best place to go.
That's a big city, isn't it?
Asked Anna.
Yeah. Have you ever been there before?
Anna shook her head, and the corners of Lloyd's eyes crinkled as he smiled.
It's not really too big of a city,
He said.
but it is pretty dirty. The truck drivers are reckless, and everything is kind of pricey. The air quality is very poor, so someone like Ken is at terrible risk for an asthma attack. If it's just us kids walking around in the middle of the day, someone would probably think we're playing hooky from school, and we might get scolded for it. Just a heads up.
So, are you from Marysville too?
Anna asked.
I am, but
Lloyd suddenly looked shy. He opened and closed his mouth a few times.
it's not far from Ken's house.
He said.
He was able to walk from there.
Ah, so these two are both city boys.
Anna thought. Then she asked one more very important thing that had been on her mind.
So, the school you go to, it's in Marysville, right? And from the roof of that school, you can see rolling mountains and open skies spreading out all the way to the horizon in every direction. That's where you first met Ken, isn't it?
Lloyd's reddish-brown eyes suddenly shot wide open, and she knew she nailed it. Just as she had thought, those things hadn't been dreams. She had experienced actual events, but from far away. She had already been pretty certain of this, but being able to confirm it put her mind very much at ease.
The thing is,
Anna wet her lips with her tongue and began to speak.
I've been able to experience firsthand what you guys have been doing up until now through—
Sorry to interrupt your quiet time, but
They turned and saw that Ken had been standing behind them unnoticed. He was quite intimidating, and with his arms crossed over the back of the seat, looking down at Anna,
Well, little Miss Church Girl,
he said,
I've given it a lot of thought, and I'm thinking you should definitely just go back home.
Where did this come from all of a sudden? But
Your old man was so worried about you.
Ken went on.
Plus, let's be honest, you're kind of a burden.
The twig Ken held in the corner of his mouth twitched as he talked.
I'm telling you this for your own good. When we get to the station, you can wait for the next train back. I'll even stay with you until the train gets there if you like. We'll get you a box lunch and everything. How does that sound?
wait, Ken, please.
Disobedient girls aren't very attractive, you know.
He scoffed.
Just hear me out, seriously.
She said.
I can explain everything. See, I've had all these dreams about you two, and
You had dreams about me saving the world?
Ken gave a little chuckle. Then poof! His sudden outburst sent his twig flying until it stuck to the wall of the train car.
Okay, but I'm being serious too.
He said.
There's something shady about this whole Spokane thing. Just don't get yourself hurt. That's something we can do without.
Oh, do you think the city's been taken over or something?
Ken raised his eyebrows, shrugged his shoulders, and responded in a low voice.
Haven't you noticed? There's something very strange about the station workers and the conductor too. Something's just off about their eyes. Their uniforms don't seem to fit just right either. Even that guy who told us we can only go as far as Spokane, he seemed all too happy that we showed up. Do you think maybe these aren't the real station workers at all? Do you think maybe there's some kind of horrible creatures that rode here from Spokane, replaced the real station workers, and are now dragging us into some awful trap?
Anna and Lloyd looked at one another, their faces turning pale. Had the world really become that chaotic already? The two of them looked up to see Ken, smiling wryly.
Well, let's just hope I'm overthinking it. No trains going back. What the?
It was now late at night in Spokane, and Ken's angry cries resounded shrilly through the station. Anna found it to be a little pathetic that even at his most aggressive, his pitch was still somewhere in the soprano range.
There was an avalanche a little while ago,
said the man in the train station.
Everything should be back up and running within 2 or 3 days.
Why is it gonna take so long?
A few reasons, one being that we're short-staffed.
The man replied.
I'm afraid there's nothing we can do at the moment.
Oh, damn it.
Ken cried.
Hey, wait, your ticket is...
Yep, I cheated the fare.
Ken replied bluntly.
You damned brat! I'd like to see your parents' faces when...
Ken glared at the grumbling station worker and then balled his fist and jogged off to join the other two. Anna and Lloyd passed through the ticket gate ahead of him and were met by a chilly night breeze.
Ah, damn it.
Ken growled.
This sucks. None of the trains are running. I don't know what we're going to do while we're stuck in a town like this.
It's okay. Don't lose your temper,
said Lloyd as he reached out to comfort him, but Ken shook him off. He seemed incredibly upset.
He's a liar,
Ken said.
It's a lie. It has to be. Avalanches don't even happen around here. They're all spies! Alien spies! Well then, is that something you should really be saying so loudly?
Replied Anna. Ken glared fiercely at her, but she didn't back down.
Look, I know you're not happy about all this,
she went on,
and I'm really sorry it's not going well so far. But I want to work with the two of you together. It would be scary to be left to deal with any of these spies alone.
I know that!
Ken spat.
And you don't have to yell to get your point across,
Anna said with a sigh as she covered her ears.
I didn't want to come with you either,
she thought.
But even if we don't like each other, we were meant to do this together. I know that God has led me here. This is the only way. And besides, complaining so loudly about every little thing makes you look so childish.
Well, anyway, I think we should find a hotel for now,
said Lloyd.
We're out of the snow here, but it's still pretty cold, and I predict it would only get colder before dawn. Since Miss Anna is with us now, and this place could be crawling with enemies, I'm not too sure about camping out tonight. We also don't want to overexert ourselves, so do we have room in the budget for a little luxury tonight? Ah, smart thinking. As always,
Ken replied.
Yeah, we can do that. I want to find a payphone anyway. I should probably call my dad soon.
Well now, he has to call his papa? He must be homesick. That's so cute,
Anna thought, and she accidentally let out a small giggle. Ken immediately glared daggers at her while a vein in his forehead twitched.
It's not like that,
he cried.
It's not like that at all.
Not like what?
Said Anna.
It's just, you got it all wrong,
he replied.
It's not what you think. My dad works for the NBS International News Network. He's been meeting with all the real bigwigs in the government for a while now. If they were to let any real nasty information get out, the whole country would panic. Plus, worst case scenario, the media could also be hijacked at any time. My dad's right there on the front lines, so the only way to get any real information about what's going on in the world is through him.
I see,
said Anna.
So then, father and son are both broadcasters.
She thought, and she found this somewhat amusing, but there was still some sort of ache in her heart.
If Ken's papa is working with all of those government bigwigs, then he must be one of the most important broadcasters out there. Even if there's no such thing as a rank in that kind of profession, it's still pretty amazing that he's among the elites of mass media. Ken has probably lived a completely different life than someone from a poor pastor's family, living in a run-down old church ready to collapse at any minute. When I really think about it, with your golden hair and your blue eyes and your baseball skills, sure, you're pretty rude and insensitive, but the truth is, Ken, you're a pretty lucky kid. Considering all that, your asthma seems like such a minor inconvenience.
Such mean-spirited thoughts didn't seem to ease that ache in her heart at all.
So that's why I call him from time to time,
Ken went on.
Who knows how long the phone lines will stay up and running, but my dad's always got the latest news and information. And that's all it is, so you can stop being all weird and suspicious about it. Well, now you understand, so everything's good, so let's go!
I wish you could understand that you don't have to yell at everyone all the time,
Anna thought.
Well, whatever.
She shrugged apathetically and took a few steps forward, but gentle Lloyd, who seemed to sense Anna's uneasy mood, came up beside her.
Are you tired?
He asked.
Do you need me to carry anything for you?
No, I'm fine,
she replied. Lloyd really was quite the gentleman.
You're already carrying so many things. I made sure to bring only as much as I could carry on my own. You really don't have to spoil me so much, you know.
Oh, I see,
said Lloyd.
And speaking of all that,
Anna went on,
what's your home like, Lloyd? Your papa, what does he do?
The instant she asked this, she regretted it. With a small sigh, Lloyd's face, still so delicate and epicene, was suddenly darkened by shadows of harsh maturity.
They got divorced. My parents,
he replied.
Please don't look at me like that. It's a common enough story.
But Anna was sure that she had already knew it.
Lloyd's mama must have been bedridden by some terrible sickness,
she thought.
Lloyd's papa must have abandoned her because of her pitiful state. What a cruel man he must be. I didn't mean to bring up any awful memories.
Anna stayed silent for a moment. Lloyd scratched his head lightly and went on.
My dad is an electrical engineer. It's a different kind of work from what Ken's dad does, but he's among the best in his field. Because of that, he was always so busy, which made my mom pretty unhappy. But to me, he was the best dad ever. When I was still very young, he always bought me all kinds of computers. Apple, Atari, Nintendo, stuff like that. When I got bored of the games, I became more interested in taking them apart and messing with the programming, and so he gave me all sorts of kits to help me with that. Even at his place of work, he allowed me to take as much outdated hardware as I could carry, so after my parents broke up, that was the only connection we still had. In our house back in Marysville, my room was filled from wall to wall with nothing but computers. If you ran them all together, their memory and processing power could beat any supercomputer out there.
Ah, so you learned a lot about technology then,
said Anna. She was about to add,
That's great!
But for some reason, Lloyd's expression had become even gloomier. Anna was flustered, but she tried to go on.
I'm jealous. I don't know how to use a computer at all. You had access to an advanced education from a young age. You were lucky. Someday you'll have a good job, won't you?
But it was all for nothing!
Lloyd clenched his fist hard, and he shut his eyes tight behind his glasses.
Humans aren't machines!
He cried.
I can't fix them like I can fix a computer! Oh, if only I had studied medicine instead, or even biology! Sure, I'm lucky that my IQ is pretty high, but what's the point of having a big brain if you can't use it to help anybody?
Lloyd's voice trembled, and it looked like he was fighting the urge to cry. Anna thought that there might be more he really wanted to say, but it seemed like he might not be able to hold himself together if he went on.
This is about his mother, isn't it?
When she realized this, Anna held her tongue.
Lloyd really respects his father,
She thought.
and he's probably a lot like him too. But because of this, he may also feel a slight sense of rivalry between the two of them. Because his father was so busy, it seems like he wasn't very good at meeting the needs of others. And I wonder if Lloyd feels that he must make up for that himself. It might even be that he's afraid of ending up exactly like his father. Maybe that's why he goes so overboard with his respect for women. He barely knows me, and still his behavior is so polite, so gentlemanly. Of course, he loves his mother above all else. It's the famous Oedipus complex. You want to give your mother what your father never could. You want to find that cannon flower that would cure her illness. And you would surely risk your own life for it, wouldn't you?
She looked at him curiously from the corner of her eye and saw that Lloyd's gaze was locked onto Ken's back as he walked so far ahead of them. Lloyd's eyes were red, his cheeks had gone pale, his gait was unsteady, and only his head was held up straight as he glared so intensely.
He stares at Ken, his treasured companion, his one and only friend for so long, in a way that seems so unforgiving somehow.
Anna thought.
Is it a competitive spirit or something like rivalry? He seems so hateful, so frustrated. We're a lot alike, you and me,
She said at last. She gently slipped her fingers into his hand and Lloyd's tension melted away, replaced by a slight shiver.
Despite his childish behavior, Ken is honestly pretty amazing, isn't he?
She went on.
He made a conscious choice to leave home and save the whole world. But you and I are different. We may say we chose to do this for the same reason, but our true motive for coming along was to save our mothers, right? We're pathetic, aren't we?
Lloyd tried to pull his hand away, but Anna held it tighter.
But it's fine either way.
She continued.
So we walk 7,000 miles to help our mothers. If we end up saving the world in the process, that's pretty stylish, don't you think?
Anna.
Lloyd's grip suddenly tightened and Anna couldn't help but wince.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I hurt you?
Lloyd asked, flustered.
I mean, you did a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's nothing to be sorry for.
Anna replied.
In fact, it's something you should be proud of.
Proud?
Of course,
Said Anna, nodding so intently that her ponytail bounced.
You see, Lloyd, when you were back in your hometown, it sounds like you were just that typical kind of genius kid in glasses. But now, you're a full-fledged warrior. It takes real effort to be this strong.
She held out her reddened hand to show it to him. For a moment, Lloyd was totally silent as his eyes glanced over her face, her hand, her left eye, and her right eye, slowly, and each in turn. Then he took hold of Anna's outstretched hand, suddenly pulled it close, and pressed it to his lips. It was a somewhat cold, somewhat warm, terribly brief kiss.
Thank you,
he said.
Whoa!
Anna shook her head as her heart pounded intensely. It had happened so unexpectedly, and now Lloyd, whom she thought only as a friend, seemed so mature as he looked back at her. It was quite a shock.
I'm so happy.
Lloyd went on.
I don't know why, but I'm just so happy. Suddenly I feel like I have so much courage. If we're warriors, then you must be the goddess of battle. No, you'd be a warrior too. A female warrior. Like a Valkyrie. Don't you think? Anna, I swear to you, I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. Even if it costs me my life. I'll show you I can protect you. So no matter what the thoughtless Ken says, please stay with us, always.
Well, hold on there.
Anna replied, and she did her best to hide any signs of her heart's throbbing with an impish smile.
This is a great honor, and I'm very happy and very grateful. But please, don't say things like that. It almost sounds like a confession of love. What about the cannon flower? I know that you'll do anything to bring that back home to your mother, even if it means stepping right over me. Isn't that right?
The cannon?
Lloyd's jaw dropped.
How did you know about that?
He cried.
I still haven't told you anything about it.
Well, the truth is,
You two.
Oh, here we go again.
Right when she was about to explain her own special powers, there was Ken, glaring down at her furiously, with his back hunched over like a boiled shrimp. So once again, this would not be the right time for her confession. And maybe it was terrible to admit it, even to herself, but she finally realized that, subconsciously, she had slowed down her pace and steadily put distance between herself and Ken, quite purposefully.
How could you possibly think that now is a good time to be flirting with each other?
Ken went on.
The hell is wrong with you? Has no one ever taught you that there's a time and place for everything? Some of us are alert and on edge, frantically and desperately, seeking shelter for the night. But here you two are.
No, you've got it wrong, Ken.
Lloyd's right. We weren't doing anything. Yeah, shut it.
Ken snapped.
I don't want to hear your excuses. It's fine. Leave all the hard stuff to me. And you two just stand around and make out with each other. Go on. Don't be shy. It's all right.
There was a glint in Ken's glaring eyes as his tense shoulders suddenly drooped.
But if a big bad enemy, or say a big bad swarm of enemies show up, I'm hoping you'll at least lend me your sincerest cooperation, if I may humbly ask that of you two. Big bad swarm? What do you mean? Ah!
The streetlights had gone dark, so she hadn't understood what he meant by this. But it had become clear now, as the three children, or the three warriors, found themselves surrounded by countless red, glowing eyes. On unsteady, wavering legs, in an ever-shrinking circle around them were what appeared to be all of the adults in town. There was an old man in overalls, and an older lady holding a shopping bag. There was a young man who looked like he just warped there straight from the age of the hippies, and so many, many more besides. All of them looked like average people you'd find in any old town, but they were walking as if they had no minds of their own, and were slowly but steadily closing in on the three of them.
What's going on?
Lloyd cried.
Why the heck are they acting like this?
Suddenly, he grabbed both of Ken's arms and pinned them behind his back.
Hey, what did you say to these people that made them so angry?
He demanded.
Depending on who you're talking to, discussing things like putting ketchup on a hot dog, the proper way to barbecue, or eating pizza with a fork can really rile people up. Did you mention something like that by accident?
What?
Cried Ken.
I didn't do anything like that. Let me go. I was only trying to ask them where we could find a hotel.
For real?
For real. Now let go.
Ken broke free of Lloyd's grip and immediately poised himself with his golden bat and a low kendo stance, which he had learned from Star Wars.
Listen,
he muttered to the other two.
These guys were all grumbling something about a haunted house. A haunted house, the haunted house, something like that. It seemed like there might be one around here. Maybe. And so I tried to get a better listen. I think they were saying you can hear the sound of a piano ringing out from some old house that is supposed to be completely abandoned.
A piano? Of course!
Cried Lloyd as he looked up at him and Ken nodded. Anna had absolutely no idea what that meant.
Right,
said Ken.
And so, since I wanted to hear them better, I tried to get a little closer. Then out of nowhere, they came at me with things like, "Who are you?" and "Where do you go to school?" They were really grilling me. "Oh, why are you out walking so late? Won't your mother and father be worried?" And so you...
What did you do?
I just said it's none of your damn business,
Ken replied bluntly. Anna covered her eyes. If you were trying to make adults angry at you, words like those were the best way to do it. Ken clearly either wasn't very bright, had a terrible way of handling things, or he was genuinely just a bad kid. But no matter which one was true, she was sure that any of these were especially terrible traits for the leader of the Global Defense Force to have. How could so many lives be depending on someone like this kid?
Playing around at night is the first step towards delinquency.
Suddenly, the old man in overalls launched his attack. Ken and Lloyd, who were used to all kinds of things one might hear on the city streets, weren't affected much at all. But Anna was raised in a church, and when suddenly the word delinquency plunged itself into her eardrums, she instantly lost about a third of her hit points, and in a panic, she covered her ears tightly.
Let us not turn a blind eye to the children of others. They are all our own children, the children of the world, the precious children of this green earth.
The older lady with the shopping bag was using a pamphlet from the cultural center as a megaphone and was yelling into it in an aggressive voice.
Gah!
Something seemed to hit its mark. Lloyd suddenly became very itchy and started squirming.
Having such lurid affairs when you're still so young is indecent. You're making your mother cry.
The young hippie started wailing along with the nostalgic electric guitar playing in the background.
Weirdo. Your mom must be crying all the damn time then, huh?
Ken yelled in reply, and the man stopped short.
Now, give him the usual.
Ken called out to Lloyd as he menaced the rest of the swarm with various kendo stances. Unfortunately, Lloyd was too busy whirling in circles and scratching himself all over. He kept trying to take off his backpack, but time and time again he'd be struck by another wave of terrible itchiness and start writhing in agony, so his attempts weren't going very well. Ken wanted to help, but both of his hands were busy at the moment. In the end, Anna uncovered her ears and rushed for the backpack. Meanwhile, the second stage of the attack had begun.
Ruffians, ruffians, ruffians!
A child's duty is their schoolwork.
Children should always be studying. Study, study, study!
It was a disaster. An octopus had appeared at Ken's ear, and with its 8 wrinkling tentacles, it was attempting to strangle him. Piping hot balls of grilled octopus meat had begun raining down in torrents over Anna and the fallen Lloyd. As it stood, the whole team was doomed. Defeat was inevitable.
Ken, what's the usual?
Shaking off bits of dried seaweed and pickled ginger, Anna had somehow managed to unbuckle the backpack and call out to Ken.
It's a spray!
Ken called back.
Do you see anything in there that says extra strength mocha spray? Man, I hope we didn't use it all up.
Huh? Spray like from a can?
She replied.
You shouldn't be using anything that has CFCs in it, you know. Oh, no, this isn't it. I think this is just Evian. Wow, Lloyd sure has a thorough skincare routine, huh? That's not it either. You guys really need to organize this bag. Oh, this is so annoying. But that looks like it might be... Got it!
Yes! Now spray them!
As Anna squeezed the nozzle, a fog enveloped them all, and the effect was incredible. In the blink of an eye, both the octopus and the balls of octopus meat disappeared. The old man, the older lady, the young man, and the rest came to their senses at once, blinking their eyes rapidly. And then, as though they all suddenly remembered something they had to do at the exact same time, they hastily took their leave.
What kind of medicine is that?
Anna nervously murmured to Ken as she pinched her nose closed in an attempt to block out any of the lingering fog. Ken gave her a relieved smile while finally lowering his bat.
It's okay, it's not poison,
he said.
I think since we're young and peppy, it doesn't really have any effect on us when we breathe it in.
Anna looked puzzled.
For those guys, it works kind of like an alarm clock,
Ken went on.
Even if they're still on their feet after a whole night without sleep, it perks them right up. Makes even the most sluggish brains sharp and clear. They wouldn't even be able to fall asleep for up to 3 hours after a good dose of it, even if they wrapped themselves up all snug and cozy in a goose-down comforter. A programmer trying to meet his deadlines, an author trying to finish her novel. Apparently, adults use this stuff all the time when they're tired. Lloyd, he knows a good deal about it.
So you mean... we just woke all these people up, basically?
Even if he had assured her that it wasn't poison, the fog still stung her throat a little.
Yep,
Ken replied.
These guys, they're all under some kind of mass hypnosis or something. But at least they're all still human. I had a terrible time at a zoo once. Hypnotized gorillas and emperor penguins are 100 times worse. Sheesh. Well, whatever. I guess we should deal with our little genius then.
Ken knelt down beside their fallen companion who had fainted from overly scratching himself, and he held out his hand just above Lloyd's forehead. Anna nearly gasped as Ken's palm suddenly glowed faintly and Lloyd's body twitched.
Psycho healing!
It was a skill Anna knew well, too. Truthfully, it was a beginner's skill, and if this was an example of his mysterious power, it was clear to Anna that hers were far stronger and that she was more adept at using them. But she didn't say a word. Instead, she felt that she wanted to watch a little longer as Ken's profile, which looked so serious now, was bathed in that green healing light. That usual rough and vulgar expression was entirely gone. His face now had a holiness to it, something devout. A quiet tranquility reserved only for those granted the ability to work miracles. Slowly, and in a way that felt very familiar, Ken's palm, glowing with that green light, traced over Lloyd's entire body, all the way up and all the way down, down and then back up again, like a gentle caress from only a few inches above. Anna wouldn't have had to do this so slowly and carefully. She was able to do it from a great distance as long as she could still see the person, and with just a little,
Yeah!
She could have cured them in less than a wink. But she didn't want to interfere. Sure enough, Ken had these powers too. That was kind of exciting, wasn't it? Because even if he hadn't been aware of it, he had still used those powers to call to her, to seek her out. No matter how many cruel words came out of his mouth, they could never cancel out the calls that came from his soul. This cheered her a bit. She felt suddenly filled with self-confidence.
In that case, I'll just have to put up with him.
She thought.
But Ken, why are you always in such a bad mood anyway? I'm better at this than you are, but if I did something like butt in from the sidelines, you'd probably just yell at me until my ears started ringing again. Well, being griped at isn't all that bad, I guess. I'm used to it by now. So if Ken suddenly became kind and obedient, that would just be weird. I'd have to wonder if something was wrong with him.
He was definitely moody and he complained a lot. But somehow, Anna found herself thinking that it wasn't such a bad thing after all. And this made her feel funny.
And what about Lloyd?
She thought.
How pitiful. Always protect you or something like that. That's what he just said, but it looks like I was a bit more helpful in that fight just now than he was. Now what?
Anna let out a little chuckle in spite of herself.
Oh.
And speaking of Lloyd, he seemed to be regaining consciousness. Ken breathed a sigh of relief and stood up. That saintly look was gone, and the mischievous brat had returned. He then lifted the half-conscious Lloyd by the nape of his neck like a cat and shook him harshly.
Hey, let's go,
said Ken.
Pull yourself together.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Lloyd mumbled.
Hey, can you walk? Start walking.
And that was that. Anna softly shook her head, and she watched the two boys as they steadily walked on ahead of her. There was still someone else who needed healing. She was shaky and exhausted, but it seemed as though Ken hadn't even noticed. Apparently, as long as she wasn't hurt so badly that she couldn't move or hadn't completely fainted, he didn't seem to feel it was worth the trouble. It seemed, he felt, that if a person was able to speak, then naturally they would announce that they were in pain, if indeed they were in pain. To the very end, he appeared to be a boy of very shallow thought. But a girl's heart is a complicated thing, a thing that one may never fully understand, even after a whole lifetime.
It's all right,
she thought to herself.
It's all right.
Taking advantage of the fact that Ken clearly wasn't going to look back, Anna focused her thoughts and healed herself instantly. She noticed that there was still a slight ache in her chest, but if she didn't pull herself together, she knew they were going to leave her behind. Just like all the time she had done running long jumps in school, she gave a tiny spirited hop as if she were at an invisible starting line, and then she began sprinting. As soon as there was no snow on the ground, those boys sure moved fast.